Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Web3 Marketing Podcast. I'm Dasha, and we're going to have an amazing episode with guys from Brickken. Felix, Edwin, hi. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Dasha. Thank you.
Amazing to be here and talking with you. So thanks for the invite.
I think it's going to be a super interesting conversation. Before we start, what's the purpose of this episode? So, there are two. First, this is going to be the episode for everyone who's interested in tokenization of their business. Of course, folks from Web3, because they use tokenization a lot, but also people from normal companies, Web2 business owners, founders, marketing leaders, growth leaders. If you're interested in tokenization and raising funds through tokens and token sales, this is an episode for you because Brickken is doing exactly that. And we're going to be discussing with Felix and Edwin all the advice, how to do this, do's and don'ts, if you need this or no. So if you're interested in tokenization, definitely stay with us and listen to the whole episode. And the second purpose of this episode is to discuss your case of B2B marketing that you're doing at Brickken. I think you're doing a great job. I noticed your case with the token sale that you've been doing for Brickken, a big marketing campaign along the way with the sale. So everyone who is involved with B2B marketing in Web3 will be able to use your case, use your advice, your tips, tricks, hints, insights, and so on. Welcome to Web3 Marketing Podcast. I'm Dasha, and this is our second season supported by Internet Computer. We're interviewing Web3 founders and marketing leaders from around the world. Tune in to listen to their insights and real Web3 marketing cases. Let's start with knowing a little bit about you. Edwin, do you mind to start with just giving us a short intro about yourself?
Yes, again, thank you very much for having us and introducing this new concept. Well, it's not new, but kind of like that keyword that is booming, right? Organization. So how I ended up here is because I used to be an M&A lawyer and I used to do a lot of restructuring of companies and understanding there was a lot of pains regarding how assets move or how funding works or how even selling of equity did. So I saw an opportunity with fellow founders as to how we can bring technology. It's a lot of the burdens that are bureaucratic or manual and just trying to speed up procedures because in the end, when there's technology and advances in such fields, it's important that our day to day also gets more simple, right? So I do believe tokenization in real world assets, it's a game changer for financial instruments, for companies as we see them. So that's where we are right now. But then again, I always say formerly a lawyer, but a lawyer always stays a lawyer.
Thank you so much. This is actually a very unusual personal detail. I'm definitely going to ask one more question about it later. But first, Felix, could you please also introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Felix. I'm the head of marketing and I have been with Brickken for the past 2 years. I have a background in finance and yeah, I got into crypto about 5 years ago and felt a few years ago that I wanted to take the first step to actually working with it and reached out to Edwin and he opened the door about tokenization for me at the time.
Great. We're going to ask you a lot of questions about the marketing campaigns and the tools that Brickken is using. Good to have you here with us. Edwin, a bit back to you. I actually like to ask personal questions that just arise during the conversation. So, you mentioned that you were a lawyer and now you have a Web3 company. And a lot of people who are listening to us, I know they're also just people that have different professions. They might not be part of the crypto world and they might dream about running a Web3 startup. So, what's your personal experience? Was it tough to create a Web3 startup being a lawyer?
So I don't want to kill any expectations. Yeah, it's super hard, people, but it's also a lot of fun, especially when you're a lawyer. So there's a lot of things kind of like you might know the path of legality. What is the right way of doing it? Not saying do anything illegal or anything. Let me explain a little bit. But being a lawyer, you always want to do it kind of like the correct way. And innovation doesn't thrive through the correct way. And it's nothing wrong. I mean, for example, let's put the one of the biggest for me legal architectures that have ever existed. The Uber. It's like you needed taxi licenses to perform driving for people. So they saw a back channel, which was kind of like a gray area. But look at them, they boom, and even regulation adapted because of them. Even in other countries, it started booming. So you have to understand that you have to perform some things that are not illegal. Please never do anything like that, but just to understand that innovation thrives at the borderline of legality. So for me, it was a bit weird at the beginning to adapt because you do want to perform the best, obviously, objective of the company, and you cannot be kind of like, but the law says this. It's like, yeah, but then maybe we can interpret it kind of like this. So you start becoming a little bit more adapted because you have to really perform in Web3. It's even more complex with everything that is happening or the lack of regulation that is still existing. You have to maneuver all of that, and but maybe that's also why we are in one of the most complex fields, which is securities and tokenization, because it's not technology, it's not financial, it's not community, it's a lot of things just embedded into one big bag. And you have to decide how to present that back to society, knowing that some people might accept it, some others not, but you at least have to have like a clear path as to how you're going to defend that.
So, you know how they say, like, this is not a financial advice? I think for this episode specifically, we should create our own phrase. This is not a legal advice, right?
No, please.
Because this is not a legal advice, people.
It's not a
We're
legal
just
advice.
chatting here. Okay, awesome. Seriously love your story. To be honest, just to think about this, to use the tool for tokenization made by a lawyer, this is something that I feel safe with personally. So I hope our listeners will think about this that way as well. I think it's really cool. So kudos to you. Let's talk a little bit about Brickken in general. What it is, what is the mission, how it all started, what it is now, what is the product. Then we're going to also dive into different marketing questions.
It actually coincidence with the previous answer. We were trying to do something very strict and by the book, and then we learned how to maneuver different legalities to understand that we were being too complex for the market, and people don't really have all the tools in their possession or don't even understand what are the right tools. So let's go back to the Uber. One click, I get on the cab. That's it. It's I have a service that I pay for, and it has to be like that in Web3. You don't have to answer all the complexity. That's kind of like the user experience you want to do. Don't worry about how it performs. Just worry that in one click you tokenize, in one click you can invest, in one click. We went through a hard pivot in 2021. We saw that scheme was not working, it was not scalable, it was too rigid into something that we can present and say like, you know what, why don't we allow people to use our tools for them to tokenize in their own terms. We went from us being a centralized provider into us becoming kind of like the Shopify of tokenization, where we give the tools and functionalities for people to say like, hey, I want to enter into tokenization, and then we ease that path for them.
Who are these people who usually are looking for entering tokenization? What is tokenization that Brickken allows you to do?
Our client base is very diverse. We go from real estate, we have franchises, we got restaurant, we got hotels, we got loans. Now we're gonna go institutional, so we have a couple of VCs coming up into the organization. And why is it so diverse? Is because everybody is working with equity, everybody's working with debt. So when you tokenize that, and that goes to your answer, is like what is tokenization? Is that digitization for us, any asset can be digitized, and we give them those tools for them to digitize on their own terms. And that's what is the beauty of tokenization, because tokenization is not one vertical. Tokenization is a phase. It's kind of like if our equity or our debt, our securities, our assets have a form, now we transform them into this new version, which is a token container, right? So we are digitizing something that could already be digitized because we already have shares on a digital form. I mean, you go to, for example, the United States Robinhood and you buy stocks. Now you go and say like, this is the Web3 version of that digitization phase. So our clients, when they want to go into tokenization, that is transform their assets into tokens for them to transact on chain or the blockchain, that's what we provide them. They don't have to worry about the tech that it's in the back or even some legality that it runs to. We give them the one-stop solution for them to be able to digitize that asset.
Could you maybe state a few main benefits that people are going for when they go into tokenization?
Yeah, you just open a whole new world of possibilities. And what is that? Of course, easiness for transactions, because when you invest, you see where the funds go, and there's already technology in the back, such as proof of reserves, kind of like establishing how the company is managing funds, and then obviously interaction between people now buying shares. Unless they're in the public market, such as the Robinhood or the Nasdaq, where you go directly to the market, or another provider intermediary, you don't really have access to buying stocks from companies. So this is a direct interaction without middlemen. A company can issue their equity on chain or their assets, and an investor can go directly to them. Yes, they have to comply with the law, but it's easiness of procedures. The fact that there is less intermediaries in this process means that there are less fees, and that means that it generates less friction between issuer and investor. So an issuer can really get funded by the micro retail or by the institutional retail directly. So that means the money comes in, they save money. Transparency, all funds can be directly as to how it is being used. So transparency provides trust. And then security, because you don't have an intermediary. The transaction is always between the same parties that are notable, at least on the tokenization phase. So you start adding things that are already characteristic of blockchain, and then you have the same characteristics that of the blockchain are used or pursued as a technology. You embed those into the world of securities that we know. So you incentivize a new form of security markets. That is the tokenization way. It's providing those characteristics of the blockchain and allowing you to really create a whole new scheme.
This is really cool. I also saw like the preview videos of your product and how you allow to do all this tokenization process in a few clicks. And I think you guys are doing a great job because it seemed very impressive. So you mentioned that you have a very diverse range of clients. What's the percentage there of Web2 businesses? Is this just very new for them? Or you already have a lot of clients that are from Web2?
We are at 80% Web 2 rather than Web 3. And why is that? Is because Web 3 are more focused on utility tokens, so issuing their own cryptocurrency in a certain way. And the Web 2 don't want to pursue that. They don't want to go and say, oh, I'm going to create the next Solana or whatever. They say, like, I know my game is with equity and debt, so I want to pursue that. It's because of what they're used to that Web3 are not so engaged into that form of tokenization because they already have a lot of tokens out there. Versus Web2, this is kind of like, I don't want to pursue that. I'd rather stay with what I have and what I own, and then I'll shoot my own form of funding. So they're used to that. So I believe that is kind of like the why we have so many of Web2 with a Web3 technology.
Awesome. Very impressive. So I want to talk about your own case, about promoting Brickken and like growing in all these marketing activities that you do now. How did you guys start? How did you get the first clients? Did you do some marketing or you did some cold outreach or was some kind of partnerships?
The funny thing with crypto, in my experience, is that you kind of begin that whole process even before the product is finished. So you kind of start building the foundation right off the get-go, and as you have the product released, you can start capitalizing on that traction that you already have prepared. We already started with that pretty early on and built ourselves a pretty solid community that could help out with increasing the awareness and amplify the reach for us to get into contact with traditional companies. We pretty much focus both on traditional business channels, paid media buy and LinkedIn ads, Google ads, but we also complemented that with native Web3 channels, influencer marketing or Twitter, which is very big. And yeah, built that foundation to where we already had a bunch of leads and potential clients to be ready to start using the protocol and start tokenizing their assets once we had the product up. And going to the background of that, there's a certain degree of preparation that needs to be made legal and marketing wise for the tokenization to be a success. So all of that was done beforehand and yeah, capitalized on once the product was released about a year ago.
I like how you made it sound so easy. We just built a community from scratch of some B2B guys, and they helped us, get our first clients. And by the moment we release a product, we already had the first clients. This is how we roll. Super easy. We used a lot of channels, and it worked. I love it. Thank you so much for this attitude. I think it's great, but we're gonna dig deeper. So you said you built a community. You mentioned some channels, but overall, imagine you talking to someone who is right now trying to build a B2B community around their not yet even a product, right? What would be like three key things
Mhm.
to do?
I think what you first need to focus on is how do you want what you're building to be perceived? How do you make it as easily comprehensible as possible to where when you actually start doing outreach and start to try to attract potential people that would be interested in what you're doing? How do you make sure they actually understand what it is, and that they have the necessary content to share the excitement that you're having yourself?
Just wanted to add here, you mean like maybe a landing page, some messages for cold outreach, maybe like a article about what you're building, this kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. A web page, just basic information, a blog, and videos, promotional content that is very easily digestible, and gives a clear direction of what information is relevant to see before you actually evaluate whether this is a project that you as a potential community member would be interested in. So create a landing page, create some blog posts, create some videos, and yeah, start building from there.
Did you do cold outreach or you just went for paid promotion right away or was a mix?
We made it clear from the start that we wanted to go where the crypto native people are. So we focused a lot on Twitter, getting our presence there, interacting with other accounts, and showcasing ourselves to where it was the most relevant. We did a lot of promotions with influencers. Because at that time you had non-crypto people who was also super interested in everything crypto related. So the reach that they had pretty easily translated into people getting excited and actually being interested and digging deep. And once they did, they had that content that you had already prepared. You had a certain call to action, maybe join our Telegram, join our Discord, follow our Twitter, and you can kind of start working from there and amplify that with more channels, with more promotions, with token related activities and campaigns.
What was the size of your community in the end of the first stage of building a community?
I think it was for Twitter, for example, we had maybe 10,000 followers. I mean, that was in our biggest focus. Facebook, Instagram, a bit smaller. Telegram, we made sure to focus on very much early on as well. Because Telegram is easier to build up than a good structure in this. In Discord, it's much more interactive, and there's many more components that you need to figure out for people actually wanting to use the platform. Whilst on Telegram is more simple channels, more direct communication. So Telegram, we had around 10, 15,000 after the first phase.
Could you share the budget in any way? Maybe like the range?
Yeah, I would love to share that because we were at €0. And you're like, how do you get? It's quite simple, as Felix was saying. It's not that it's simple; it's that it's time consuming. I am gonna add a little bit with the blog post here. For example, when we entered the space, we saw that there was nobody writing about tokenization. So the keyword was out there, and we were like, "Why is nobody writing about this?" So we started benchmarking against potential competitors, but nobody was struggling with the keyword. Some of them were doing like podcast, which is perfect, but then Google cannot really understand what is the conversation, so you don't get that keyword. Other ones were doing YouTube channels, which again, it's for engagement, but kind of like if I want to write tokenization, I'm not gonna go for YouTube first. I'm probably gonna Google it. So our first structure was for in the first year, we were writing like madmen, 2 or 3 blog posts per week. They were like we were just writing everything. So then when we launched our token sale, we were started structuring it was easier. Why? Because we already had a presence. So it was not like we were born out of the blue. And then we started targeting different channels, Twitter, inviting obviously our first circle of people, kind of like the people that trust us, other projects. We started building all of that, but the foundation was there, which is trust. People trust what they see on the internet. And if they Google and they see a point of authority, they're like, oh, this must be legit. It's not that it's not legit. It's just that first page of Google should be kind of like, for example, NFTs. In 2020, whoever wrote a lot of NFTs would have owned the keyword. It was nowhere to be taken, kind of like sporadic things, but there was not a company work. So I do believe a lot of the things in Web3, we believe that it's all like crypto Twitter, yes, KOLs, yes. All of that is it's paid, but we forget the free, hardworking, building up that content strategy. People don't want to do that anymore because it takes time. So effort at the end, even though it's time consuming, is probably the most profitable one.
So basically, step one, you made sure that you're going to be perceived well by your audience, that you're going to be easy to understand, that you're going to have all the materials needed, right, to understand what you guys doing, to get excited about the product you're building. Then you went started grinding on the free channels, putting a lot of efforts into content marketing. Then you started doing Twitter, and then there were KOLs also, which were obviously you paid for, right, in some paid marketing. But the key thing that you started doing from the very beginning, and I guess you're still doing now, is just producing a lot of useful content, right? So like focusing on content marketing and making sure that you're talking about your topic, the tokenization. This episode is supported by Internet Computer, and we want to tell you about their amazing Definity Grant program. We've actually received their community grant ourselves. So if you are a developer, researcher, or educator working on blockchain or AI technology, you can receive this grant too. The Definity Grant program can give you up to $100,000 in funding, as well as support and exposure through the ICP ecosystem. You can read more about the grant in the description down below. And if you decide to apply, fill out our form. We will chat with everyone who applies and recommend the best projects to ICP. Don't miss this chance to get funding and join the community of innovators. What were the main struggles? Or maybe you had some fails that you're willing to share.
Now, the main struggle marketing wise, I mean, again, I came into the company just after you guys started. And at the time, we had what Edwin said, a clear direction that we see an opportunity here that, the representation of content marketing, it relates to tokenization, is pretty low. And there's an opportunity here. But that also meant that what Edwin just mentioned, the grind of creating a bunch of content and creating the foundation, which people probably want to skip in favor of starting to push more people to join. But we had this long-term focus that we wanted to build a foundation, and once we started capitalizing on it, we could actually maintain that growth and make sure that the community members that passes by us and sees us in every other effort that we do actually will have the necessary information and eventually probably join us and find it interesting what it is that we're building. So that was probably the biggest one for me, but probably you have another one.
I'm gonna be honest because this is a educational podcast. Founders, we had a mistake on our founding team at the beginning that led to our hard pivot. So this is the best piece of advice I can give to absolutely every single builder out there. Make sure that your founding team follows the exact same vision, the same perseverance. They want to have the same thing that you want. They believe that what you're building with them during the hard times at the beginning, they stick with you. That if you're working 24/7, your founders believe that they can work 28 hours because they just want to show that they're as much as you. So I don't mind saying this. It's we had a problem with the founding team that it kind of led us to some downhill and we had to find a solution. Hopefully, somebody really hears to this because who you marrying in even in marriage, you just go for a divorce. But when you have a company and you have other employees and you have investors and you have a lot of things, what you're doing affects absolutely everybody. So whoever you want to create a company with, make sure they are as they say they are, and they are with you 24/7.
It's a really good piece of advice, and I'm glad you guys survived it, all the turbulence of that period. Well, it is possible to change everything, and you're the proof of that. Okay, to wrap up our discussion about your own marketing case, guys, I wanted to ask, so did you do any cold outreach to potential clients, the companies that you really wanted to work with, or that didn't really happen in the beginning?
It did for sure. I mean, from a marketing point of view, one of the benefits in this space, is the composability of the space, and people are very open to collaborate. So we were pretty early on with connecting ourselves with other projects that we believed in and we thought were interesting, and maybe even a community that's aligned with what we're doing. It's really worth doubling down on. It's always a risk who you associate yourself to, but if you make sure that the projects that you do so with are aligned with what you're creating and you can create synergies in between communities, it's a very powerful tool to quickly growing your own community and gaining connections and potential longer term partnerships as well.
I think it's a very important component, and I'm glad that you just confirmed that you guys did that, because I think A lot of people, especially first time founders, they can be shy about this. Like if the person doesn't have a BD or pure sales background, he might not know that you just need to go and ask. And crypto is a super friendly space, right? And like literally a lot of people or a lot of projects are ready to connect with you. So, and this is important in the beginning. It's important along the way, but in the beginning, it's just crucial. It's giving you that main advantage. So, guys, right now, I know you already finished your own token sale, and there was a big marketing campaign. Why did you do the token sale?
We started last year. We started doing our token sale a couple of months before Bitcoin hit all-time high. So that's November 2021, I believe, when it hit 60. And we had to stop our token sale because we foresaw the bear market running for so long. So our efforts were super, super good. We had a great marketing strategy, great exposure. We created that FOMO sentiment, which was nice. And then we had to tell people that we were not going to launch because if we would have launched, we foresaw that it would be very, very bad for us because the market was going to pull back. And we saw that. We saw coins dropping to 90, other ones disappearing. So it's not that your product is not strong, it's just that the market doesn't care. It's what it is. If there's a pullback because liquidity is running out, it will affect everything. Even Nasdaq got affected. There were tech stocks running, banks crashing. We had to go, and the marketing efforts during the next months was about them kind of like understanding why we didn't want to launch. So we had to build that trust foundation as to saying, guys, maybe we don't believe we're experts or anything, but we do believe we work here 24/7. So maybe we do have the incentive not to crash ourselves and maybe give everybody the opportunity to perform better the day of tomorrow. So we did that. We finished our token sales this year because there was an amount pressure from the community since we were asking them to delay and stall. And we had to really perform that kind of like maybe it's time that we have to launch because we cannot keep holding that because we also have to understand that they're investors. So just giving you a whole of the perspective as to we did a token sale, we stopped, and then we perform it again. So we're one of those weird projects that decided not to launch when we established. And marketing had a lot to do because the narrative that we had to fulfill was kind of like, I'm not playing with your money. I'm not even spending in your money. You can even check my bank account. There's no Lambos anywhere near me. It's just that we need to do what is best for the company. And that's being the message and ongoing we're trying to transmit because in the end, it is their money, but they're forgetting one fundamental thing that it is our time. And I'm not getting the 3 years back, nor is Felix, nor is all the founding team. Time is more valuable than any kind of euro. And if we invest everything on this company, that means that yes, you might have invested a big ticket or anything, but if we crash, we all go out with absolutely nothing. So they should somehow not forget that because it's a hard market and we know what is happening. So hopefully now with our good incentives and our great marketing strategies, we can fulfill whatever we decided to do and set out to do. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you for sharing this. Felix, how did you handle this? Because I guess you were the one suffering with the consequences.
That's one of the biggest difficulties, I'd say, is to always manage token holder expectations with delivering. People like to see what's planned out actually happening. And when this happened, when we made a decision to actually hold off on the launch and people were expecting it, it's going to come in a few months and building up the anticipation for it, and us having to take that difficult decision to, okay, to the benefit of the company, to the benefit of the token holders in the long run, we have to push this. And we're not sure exactly when we're going to launch, but trust us. And impressively so, we actually put this to a community vote, and the vast majority of people were actually in favor of just doing that, pushing the launch. And so we were very happy about that. But of course, we received quite a lot of backlash as well, especially in the short run. But we felt comfortable with what we've built and what kind of traction we had so far. So we just doubled down on making sure everybody was aware that look at what's been happening over the past year. Look at what we have done. Look at the partnerships we've made. Look at the traction we have and the milestones we've achieved, and try to put people into that frame of mind that this is not a bad thing. It is going to benefit everybody in the long run.
It is definitely the downside of FOMO that you can build around the token sale. And then if you pause for a little bit, your community wants to eat you
It can
alive.
quickly
And
turn. It can very quickly turn. Yeah.
And I bet you had nightmares with the phrase "when token" jumping at your face, right?
Not much
I can
sleep in that
understand.
time.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
hear it in my head. I still hear it.
It's over now, right, guys? You did well. So, just one thing I wanted to ask you said that you managed to create a pretty nice like FOMO effect. What was the key factor?
The exciting thing is that, just as was the case with content marketing, a lot of things started happening in the tokenization space, but it didn't get the awareness that, in our opinion, it should. A lot of institutional forecasts coming up, a lot of traction happening on that side, and slowly spilling over until retail for normal business as well. But I mean, all of this was already pretty established and well used within the banking system, within the institutions, across custodians. So we just focused on transmitting that information and show what's actually happening in the space, because everybody was just focusing on NFTs and play to earn. And there was this frenzy around that. So we created our own kind of focus around that instead, and just highlighted what's actually going on and how Brickken plays into this tokenization space and what makes us unique. And that started growing a lot alongside the traditional marketing efforts we did with the sale.
Makes sense.
Right.
You were just using the narrative that was already in the space and turning the wave into your
Well,
benefit.
it wasn't in the space, but it was actual traction happening, and it was actual applications and use cases, and HSBC coming and doing reports, and World Economic Forum doing reports and forecasts, but that didn't get that much visibility in the token space or in the crypto space. So we just made sure to highlight it.
Awesome. So it means like actually building the narrative based on the information
Yeah.
you have access to, and your community and the space like doesn't pay attention that much, but you see it and you basically accumulate all this in one place and you show people that it's actually a trend and a narrative and worth paying attention and investing in, right?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of things can happen if you don't pay attention, and at that time, especially to 2023, a lot of those things has been wrapping up even more.
We Felix out of the FOMO. It was through our work, setting up the right partnerships, getting the clients. Obviously, doxing ourselves. We saw it work because there was a lot of projects out there at the current time with the NFTs 2021 that nothing was doxed. So we were having amas with our community. We were showcasing who we are. We were taking pictures when we were at events. Also, being really transparent help us a lot because this transparency builds trust, right? We really went that extra mile, and I think it proved valuable, and it's valuable still till now.
Yeah, awesome. Especially interesting that you mentioned like doxing. I didn't think we ever discussed this on the podcast. So I'm curious, what's the recipe for doxing yourself right?
Yeah, so basically the whole founding team obviously are on the website, on the white paper. We showcase who we are. They're in the Telegram group, and I write a lot on the group. And they say like, "Hey, shouldn't be you working instead of being in the community?" I sometimes get that, and it's like, so if I didn't write, you will be like the CEO is hiding. But if I write, now you're saying, I don't worry. It's like, guys, can you? So I stop listening to everything. I like to drop by, have a lot of conversations. I humanize myself, which helped a lot, and it helped us humanize the company, which was nice because it's kind of like a company is very cold. You don't know who's behind. So when you start elaborating on those factors, it's like you just make sure that they believe us that we're human and we make mistakes and we can innovate and we can go back and everything. So that back and forth has been how we dox ourselves. And basically, I think it has worked because if not, with that decision to stall the launch, it would have been easier to say the words, which are kind of like how you die as a project, rug and pull. Kind of like they don't want to launch because they're already doing something. But instead of doing that, we were more close to them, kind of like believe us, we're still here. We are delivering on the product. We are going to events to talk. They're inviting us to speak. In the end, doxing, I believe, it's very, very strong, and people should push that because that is the incentive that people are looking now, especially with everything that has occurred.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing this. I think it is really interesting, especially for me as a person who also came from Web to space. I just keep wondering and wondering, like so many projects that people invest in and like no one is doxed, and then everyone has been pulling the rug and people like, oh, what happened? It's just like, what do you expect, right? If you invest in someone you don't know. So it makes sense. So I support your choice, guys. Let's talk about your marketing campaign that you did for the token sale. But before I ask Felix about this and particular channels and tools that he's been using and so on, what is the current result? And is it still on or the sale has already finished?
We finished the sale about a month ago, so it was running from early this year until May. And yeah, we did it in trenches, but it's finished now, and it was fairly successful, I'd say. So I'm very happy.
How do you evaluate the results? Like, what is successful for you?
Ad spend metrics is one side of it. How much did we spend on the campaign, and what did we get out of it? But it's also, in my opinion, it's also the awareness of it. Not everybody ends up investing from these efforts we do, but we make a lot of noise during that process. And some of them might not invest, but some of them might stick around and follow what we do, follow our updates, and might even be a potential investor in one of the clients that's tokenizing through us in the future. So it's also the community aspect of it. How's it been growing? What's the activity metrics? And yeah, so it's the financial part, but it's also the community part, because in the end that's an asset, and in the end that's something that can benefit the whole ecosystem. So I like to take that into account.
Awesome. By the way, you mentioned that the community was voting before. Do you have like a DAO and it's part of your tokenization? Or you were just like voting in some chat and it was not DAO related?
For that one, we actually did a token gated voting. So it was one person per vote, and we made it very simple. We do plan to work with a DAO-like structure in the future, but at that time, we just felt that this is a tough decision. This is a big decision. We might receive a lot of backlash, but we feel confident in our community sharing our view on the market. So we're setting something easy up. We're making sure only token holders can vote, to align interest and make sure that we do the right thing. And yeah, that was the outcome.
Awesome. So overall, the token sale was both for marketing and creating noise and splash and buzz, and for fundraising as well,
Yeah.
right? Edwin, maybe you could share, you probably explain the roadmap to the community, what you're going to be using the funds for or whatever, right? What's next for the product that is being enabled by this token sale?
So regarding roadmap, one of the things that we should be more proud of in Brickken is because when we designed our white paper 2 years ago, we wrote a lot of things. It was an idea, and it was kind of like a mix of everybody on board and say like, how are we really gonna do tokenization? So that took us a lot of effort. Actually, our white paper is like 42 pages long, and it's like that's insane for Web3. But hey, kind of like we did it as a roadmap for us internally. When we started writing, we was more like, how are we gonna generate that know-how internally if we don't share how the vision should be? So we started writing and writing, and it came out to be a single roadmap. 2 years later, we comply with everything that was in that white paper. So it's funny that what we set out to do, we did, from how the tokenization worked, how the platform, the marketplace of independent partners, whatnot. So everything we did was there. We're missing a couple of minor things, but they're not like drastic as the main source. Kind of like because everything that was not there is because we pivoted. Obviously, as you start drafting who you are and then you start building on what you drafted, then you also have divergences, which is perfect. I mean, you should always have a divergences because you start building know-how. Our next roadmap is now that we have this MVP is perfection in more our product, kind of like adding functionalities on something that is already built. Because our next big goal is to target institutional investors, so like the high tickets of how to get tokenized. We went from small tickets because we wanted to test everything works, and now we're trying to get into the big institutional because those are already kind of like looking for a solution such as ours. We don't have yet all that they want because when you go to an institutional, it's like an I don't know, they see a car, it's like, so when is this car gonna take me to Mars? Because for them it's so easy to ask. They just want the best of the best without even asking. It's like, yeah, but I thought it could be done. So we're at that era between kind of like we don't have a rocket, but we do see how the rocket can be sold to that person looking for that explosion. So this is how we pivoting now. We have a solid foundation. We can build on top, and now we kind of like putting that in the gift wrapped box for them to say like, hey, maybe not a rocket that you saw, but it works as you want it to be. And like that's how we want to pursue the next couple of months, years in Brickken, kind of like building that rocket.
Awesome. Well, Elon survived with SpaceX, and you will too, I think.
I mean,
You will manage.
true.
By the way, when you said the white paper is so long, I'm like, of course, the founder is a lawyer. Like, what do you expect? So I
Oh
think
my
that's normal. Anyway, kudos. This is a great result. I worked in Web3 startup that was B2B focused. And it's really hard. And the fact that you actually created a roadmap for 2 years and then went and did everything and you created an MVP and now you have paying clients and you get going for the bigger clients now and you also perform successful token sale. This is all like every Web3 founder's dream is what you just described. So I think it's a really great result, guys. I want to ask about the tools in the campaign. I noticed that you were doing both PR, you were doing KOLs, you were doing AMAs. Like, what worked the best? Felix, what would you say was like the key thing? And overall, maybe you could describe the whole like marketing plan.
So let me describe some channels. First of all, what actually worked for us was coin listing sites. What you see now, for example, at this time, the demographic we focused on was more crypto native because there's not that many external people interested in the space. So that was a good channel for us to use as well. And what made me the most excited and was what was the most successful thing as part of this fundraising was using tools like Sealy. It's a community management tool where you can create quests and incentivize people carrying out those quests, and that would ultimately benefit the company. And I was super excited about this time because we have spent these 2 years to build a very good community to really nurture it and make sure they're very aligned with what we're doing and fully understand what it is that we're doing and share the same passion. And this was the first time I felt like, okay, now we're going all in. I'm going to capitalize this, and now we're going to align everybody and see how far we can go. And it's helped a lot. I mean, everything we did, everything PR wise, everything KOL wise, all of that we used Sealy and similar tools to amplify that. So it really had a spillover effect on all the efforts we did. In terms of the general structure we had, we started quite early creating a waitlist for when the public round started. And we started very early to do some testing across different channels, some KOLs, YouTube, Twitter, and see what worked now because things were so much different now from what they were 2 years ago. So we kind of needed to start over. Same things didn't work as they did last time. New things, new tools emerged, and that allowed us to gauge kind of what we should double down on once the sale actually starts. But yeah, we did this structure, adding some bonuses to the very early people that were looking to invest, and of course, limiting the amount of people who could sign up. And once we gauged the market, found the right tools to use, we doubled down on that. And yeah, that was using our own efforts internally, like Sealy. It was using more awareness campaigns, crypto native like TaskOn, Galaxy, Postmint, to all the time amplify the scope of all of this marketing material, all of the content that we had been producing over the past years. And yeah, we had a lot of things that we've been building and a lot of partnerships and a lot of traction, seeing as the product actually is launched early this year. So we wanted to capitalize on that, and made sure to do. And yeah, that was the most effective ones. Twitter, KOLs also it varies heavily. Which ones works and which ones doesn't. Everybody claims, them having a very solid community and all of that. So it does require a lot of due diligence in terms of what audience do they have, how do they interact, all of that. So that's a challenge, but if it's done correctly, it's also very valuable, even in this market.
Awesome. Yeah, you mentioned Zili and other platforms. I use them as well because I'm also a Web3 community builder alongside with building a podcast. So I do use this a lot and it works really well. Did you manage this all in house or you had like some agencies helping you?
Well, that's something I forgot to mention. Our ambassador program. That's another thing we started building about a year and a half ago. very slowly getting the people who are kind of your super fans, getting them more involved. I think that's also one of the best recipes for a successful community management, specifically to make sure that the people who are actually very interested in what you're doing and show initiative, they get the tools to do so. So they were a big part of hosting community activities and increasing the awareness of that. But more to your point, we used some external agencies. We used PR agencies. We used actually KOL agencies because again, it takes a lot of resources to look into what KOLs are worth actually using. So we used external services for that. Of course, we're in the Coin Telegraph Accelerator program, so they opened a few doors in terms of PR as well. But yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense for us to do everything in house. Sometimes you need to use specialized services, and that was the right call.
It's really cool that you mentioned an ambassador program. I think the whole market is like buzzing about it and everyone is trying to launch their own program. And I'm really curious, like, did you just start like manually noticing active people and figuring out the roles for them specifically, or you thought about the range of roles and you pushed this as a campaign to your community and like kind of saw who applied and then chose the ambassadors?
Well, early on, I'm kind of a mechanical guy. I like structure, I like automation, and having everything in its place. So I went with that approach, or we went with that approach early on. That we need content writers, we need community managers, we need this, and I learned pretty quickly on that it's easier to be agile with both what the people want to do, but also what adds value. So over time, we kind of digress to the ones showing initiatives that in turn or translates into an ambassador role. Like we had one guy, for example, all of a sudden started posting daily news in our Discord. Super random. We didn't ask him to do anything. He just started posting tokenization news. And we're like, hey, do you want to do a Twitter account specific to SEO news? He's like, yeah, sure. Okay, now let's do it. Let's create this custom role for you. And you can add value and engage yourself that way. And we had some guy who was really into games and stuff. So all of a sudden he started hosting poker nights, and that wasn't really something I had in mind, but was very appreciated by the community. So we turned more agile and try to adapt more and curate based on the people who shows initiative to begin with, because we had a lot of once you mention free tokens, people start to apply right away. So it was easier to kind of base it off of the people that were already engaged in the project and were finding their own role and translate that into an ambassadorship.
So you were incentivizing them with the future tokens, right?
Tokens, they were incentivized with the merch. We actually have a very tight relationship, the whole team, with them. So from my experience, what they appreciate the most is our transparency and us consulting with them. What do you think? Because in the end, they are sort of a representation of the community. So a lot of the decisions we make sure to check with them. What do you guys think? Can we do this better? And Edwin is talking a lot with them, often hosting AMAs with them and making sure they are up to speed. So there's a lot of ways and different ways, but tokens is a big part of it, of course.
Awesome. I really love this part, how you answered this question. I think you gave me like at least three ideas of things I can do with my own community right now. So this is why we do the podcast for. Thank you so much. It was awesome. Small question: did you invite your clients to invest, or you kind of didn't mention this to them specifically?
That's actually a very interesting question. We did not, because at the time we were building the product, we didn't have what ended up becoming our MVP. So we did test, but we didn't invite them. Although I do remember one of our clients did invest on his own, but it was not our incentive to get our clients, just because we were not at the stage of the client yet. So when we do our all effort was kind of like generating that exposure of an investor base, because then in the end it's also about our own clients will benefit from that client, that potential investor base. So we started gathering that to provide also aid and opportunity for our own clients.
Mm-hmm. Will you somehow redirect this investor base that you gathered during your token sale to the token sales of your clients?
Yes, of course. We do have some funnels that are kind of like education wise. We're providing kind of like that education to investors, saying there's opportunities in utility, but there's also opportunities in this other space, securities, and we're trying to establish frameworks for them to pivot because in the end, people who invest in A may be able to invest in B. So it's kind of like we understand that. So we're trying to gather that kind of like education base to transform their appetite, or maybe some of them already invest in stocks and whatnot. But show them we are creating this. So there's projects out there trying to get investors, and this could be a potential opportunity for you.
This is really cool. So you're not only trying to become a cool tool for tokenization, right? Better and better with each of your iteration of the product, but you also want to be the space with the right audience, right? For projects to basically run their token sales, right? What would you advise to any of your clients who are interested in running a token sale? And they're like, hey guys, we want to use Brickken, like what to do, what are the main steps, what mistakes to avoid, and how to support this all with marketing.
You have to have a strong narrative and a strong storytelling. So you have to understand what is the position of the company, what are they doing good, and then promote that. So on our side was kind of like we were getting a lot of invitations as experts in tokenization. So you build a persona, you build all of that. So it's kind of like whatever you do in positive, augment it times 100 because outside the perspective they don't understand. So for us, for example, we get used to now going to events to have speaking slots, or we got used to having podcast. I now this is our not day to day, but kind of like our okay, yeah, another let's go. But outside they're like, oh, but they got invited to Dubai. That means there must be something doing good. You forget that when you're on your day to day. So this is why it's super important that we have a lot of conversations with our community, with the ambassadors, because sometimes we do something and they say like, oh, that's whoa, you guys are doing that, and it's like yeah, I guess you'd stop seeing what you're building because you're so intense in just like the company, the company, the company. We need to do this, 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 this. That sometimes the third party perspective is super crucial for what you're doing. So I do strongly believe, as Felix can, it's important that your narrative is super strong, that you do have access to third party perspective as to and transparent one saying maybe this works, maybe this doesn't, and obviously whatever you do kind of like have a roadmap. Just don't shoot things into the air because you think oh they're gonna like this. We have a lot of ideas here, and then we witness kind of like people are not interested and they will be like I don't care, and they're like okay perfect, we care because we think people will care, but then you realize that your base, your community, they're not looking for that. So it's important that you have like an ongoing conversation and transactional kind of like give me feedback, give me know-how, and I'll make sure that I'll position the company as you deem fit, not because we believe that you are going to decide what we need to decide because we're not a DAO, because we do have the expertise, but we do believe that with your incentive we can bring 1,000 or 10,000 like you, because if you all as a group decide that this is what it needs to become, then we can fulfill that journey. We're bringing you that Brickken that you see is because in the end, it's marketing. It's a selling product.
Yeah, I can add to that. It's very true, but another thing is why. Why are you tokenizing? Is it just to gain capital? Is it just to tap into global liquidity and fund your business? Or do you actually want to take it one step further? I mean, you Dash are working with the communities as well. Do you see the value from that? Is that something your business could benefit from? Many cases it is, sometimes it's not, but have it clear to you why you're doing it and what's the main objective. Do you want to create a community of investors? Do you want them involved in the product or in the project? Is there any way where you can enhance the value proposition to potential investors? Will you have any sort of DAO-like systems? What will you actually do, and what's the objective aside of just raising the capital? I think that's important to have clear, both for you to make the most out of it, but also to be transparent with investors because it's going to affect your marketing efforts fundamentally. So yeah, why are you doing it and what's the main objective is something I'd urge people to have in mind and plan out before.
Awesome, guys. Last question. Could you share a couple of cases with me?
We can talk about ISD token, Panama District. It's our biggest race as the moment been. And it's because he understood the value of community and understood that you need to do an effort. Because sometimes it's funny that some clients come to us and it's like, yeah, but if I put it on chain, crypto people are going to invest. Like, people invest in what they know or they think that is going to be an opportunity. Just because you put something into the public doesn't mean that there's going to be appetite for it. So you have to go through the foundations and work. We had other failures with, I mean, we're going to give you the opposites. One just created a token and it's like, well, you guys have to bring me all the investors. No, that doesn't work like that. You need to work, you need your marketing. So for us, it's very easy with clients. Now we understand. And when their client doesn't want to hear and they just don't care, it's like, I mean, I can give you the tool, but seriously, you're not gonna succeed. Why? Because you're forgetting that you're crowdfunding. So you wanna go for institutionals, you do your method, your methodology as to how you're gonna get that money from a venture capital or a bank or whatever. If you want to go through crowdfunding, you need to approve that. So it's kind of like how you're getting your funds. You need to create a funnel and you need to respect the rules. It's not the same as a venture capital who's gonna one ticket a million versus a retail who maybe is gonna invest 1,000 or 10,000. It means that you have to guide them through the different funnel for conversion. That is why we have a success with one specific who's been our biggest raise for us, and it's because he really enjoys it. He actually talks with us a lot, requests a lot of information. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing an AMA. I'm going to these communities. What you guys think?" And he keeps on racing, and it's because he understood that he has to go through all of this just because he's targeting retail investors.
How long does it usually take to, run a token sale?
It depends on if you already have a database of people that could be users of your product. So obviously the effort could be one or the other. There's not a specific time frame, but it's important to understand that there's a lot of fake news out there saying like, oh, they raised in 1 minute. Did they? Kind of like you opened the bell and everybody just went mad. Maybe in some aspects it could happen, but in the rest, which is kind of like the 99%, it takes time. It takes some months. It takes preparation. Preparation, it's super crucial because even if the 1 minute is true and the 6 month is true, I can assure you both of them went super prepared. They didn't just say like, "Hey, I'm open for shop." No, they started building the traction, that storytelling, start gathering potential investors, starts nurturing, starts doing all of these things, and then boom, opens the bell, and then you see that you have to convert super fast. But just going and say, "Oh, I have a token now, please invest," it's not how it works.
Felix, Edwin, thank you so much for sharing your experience, for telling your stories, for all your advice. I really appreciate it. And I think it's going to be a super, super helpful episode for everyone out there. Last thing, how can anyone start using Brickken? Should they just go to the website and log in and do something and get in touch with you? Or, like, what's the way to approach it?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, obviously through the website they can already start seeing what we do, Brickken.com. And if they want to check out what we're doing is Brickken.com/token hyphen suite. And they go directly to our product where they can check and see if they want to get into tokenization, and they can use any channel through us to they can understand our community. And if somebody comes through the podcast and want to text Felix, it's available to further down on information and marketing. We are very open for education as it's needed in the space and basically everywhere.
It was awesome to have you here on the podcast. I hope you're going to come again.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, Dasha.
Sasha.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, like and follow us for more. We also have a newsletter and a Telegram channel. Check it out at web3marketingpodcast.co. See you in the next episode.